Pay Discrimination under the Equal Pay Act by Caius Schwabus. The Equal Pay Act, what is it? The Equal Pay Act of 1963 is a United States labor law amending the Fair Labor Standards Act, also known as FLSA, aimed at abolishing wage disparity based on sex. It was signed into law on June 10, 1963 by John F. Kennedy as part of his New Frontier program. The Equal Pay Act is targeted specifically at pay discrimination based on sex. Employers are prohibited from paying a person of one sex a lower rate of pay than a person of another sex. They have to be doing substantially equal work in the same establishment, meaning they have to work for the same company or employer. There can be a differential in pay if it's accounted for by a legitimate factor other than sex based on performance or quality of work. There are a few counterparts and similarities to the Equal Pay Act. Other policies have been attempted in the past but haven't been as successful as this act. It was an adjustment of the FLSA. The Fair Labor Standards Act established a federal minimum wage and required premium pay for overtime work. It also sets out certain work hour limitations for minors. The FLSA's main requirements are straightforward. Equal pay for equal work is a concept of labor rights. The individuals in the same workplace would be given equal pay regardless of their gender. It's similar to the Equal Pay Act. It is also part of the same legislative structure that houses the federal minimum wage laws. Further counterparts include Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, and Title I of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Title VII ADEA and ADA prohibit compensation discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, or disability. Unlike the EPA, there is no requirement that the claimant's job be substantially equal to that of a higher paid person outside the claimant's protected class, nor do these statutes require the claimant to work in the same establishment as a comparator. So this means that unlike the other acts, it's similar but it addressed the issues that weren't addressed in the first place. Compliance. This is how do we not break the rules? For this, men and women should be given equal pay for equal work in the same establishment. The jobs don't need to be identical, but they must be substantially equal. It is job content, not titles, that determines whether jobs are substantially equal under the EPA. Specifically, the EPA provides that employers may not pay unequal wages to men and women who perform jobs that require substantially equal skill, effort, and responsibility, and that are performed under similar working conditions within the same establishment. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC, is the federal agency charged with enforcing the EPA or Equal Pay Act and other employment discrimination laws. The requirements for employers can stay in compliance with the EPA are to make sure records are kept for employment policies and procedures and who was employed and when they were employed. Record keeping can help to show that if a case is brought against an employer, that there has to be an explanation available for why the pay disparity exists. This means that the person being paid more or less is doing less or more work depending on their position. This could be based on quality, quantity, or however it's categorized within that employer. To show that the EPA has been violated, there are elements of a claim. For pay discrimination, to establish a case under the Equal Pay Act, the plaintiff must show that there are one or more persons of the opposite sex working in the same establishment, that they receive a higher rate of pay, and that they perform work substantially equal to that performed by the person putting in the claim. If the case is established, the employer must then show that the challenge differential in pay is explained by one or more of the following. There has to be a seniority system, a merit pay system, a system that bases pay on the quality or quantity of production, or some other factor than sex, basically meaning that there's a reason they're being paid more, not just because of discrimination. There are various suggestions to make sure your company complies with the EPA requirements. One is policies. Creating a policy prohibiting wage discrimination is one way. The employee handbook could include a policy prohibiting this based on gender, race, national origin, and several other protected classes. The policy should be clear that an employee will not face retaliation for making a complaint. Wage discussion is also another interesting topic. Some employers do not allow their employees to discuss their wages. You should look at your confidentiality and social media policies and look at some of these because the NLRB, or the National Labor Relations Board, found that some of these policies violate and discourage employees from discussing various topics including pay. Record keeping is a suggestion, and some must be done in order to keep in compliance with the EPA. Also, auditing will also help to make sure that the company is running correctly. Make sure to review job descriptions, pay practices, and compensation policies to make sure that pay discrimination is not happening. Be careful to take all forms of compensation into consideration, including bonuses, equity opportunities, perks, and benefits. Employees' pay, salary, and bonuses should be set out in writing, and employers should take time to explain to each employee how their compensation is tied to merit, performance, productivity, or some combination if there is any. There should be clear and complete records relating to employment decisions made, documenting how such decisions were made and the factors taken into account. This can support the employer's position in the event an administrative hearing or lawsuit is ever filed. There can also be training to supervisors or all employees regarding pay discrimination and how to handle it. Lastly, knowledge of the general laws surrounding the Equal Pay Act will help you to stay in compliance. If the laws are unknown, they can either be looked up or the human resource manager or manager could be contacted. Thank you all.